and William Ruto. In studio, I have Mark Bichachi, who is a political analyst, joining us tonight. And I also have Alex Manyasi, also a political analyst, and the lady in the panel, that is Catherine Omanya. Thank you very much all for joining us.
You're welcome.
It is, important, Mark, we begin this conversation with asking ourselves the question, owing to what we are seeing today, well, who is the ideal presidential candidate? When you're looking for a presidential candidate, what should you look for?
You ask such a critical question, and I wish many Kenyans would ask the same question. Number one, you've got to look at the problems of the country. Problem number one in this country is corruption. It's not economics. Many Kenyans will say, oh, uchumi ni mbaya, things like that. No. It is corruption. Because the reason we complain about this economy, the reason we complain about where the shoe pinches is because of corruption. It's just that Kenyans want to be quite deflect the question of corruption in favor of their candidates, but that's the biggest issue. You've got to ask yourself who is most likely to fight corruption and, if possible, end the vice of corruption. Then number two, you've got to think about where Kenya is economically. Kenya is it's either at the cusp of glory or demise. This is what I mean. Glory because we've built the best roads, we've got ports, we've got one of the biggest airports in Africa, we've got all of this infrastructure. Now the question is, who are you going to bring to ensure they turn this infrastructure into industries, into logistics, into opportunities and businesses? Because that's the next phase of this country. It is who can take advantage of the infrastructure that exists today and turn it into a profit. Because if you dare vote in someone who will not take advantage of that infrastructure, and we have such a high level of debt on that same infrastructure, then we will fall into a debt trap. So we have to use this infrastructure. Thirdly, is who can unite this country. How many of the 40-odd tribes can sit together and say, we feel in this individual well represented, we feel he is fair, we feel that he is going to ensure that the hopes and aspirations of all our communities are going to be taken care of. Those are the three main things.
But Catherine, when you look back, that is the ideal situation. But looking at the considerations right now, it appears like they're being informed out of fear because of what we are seeing today, the relationship between the president and his deputy.
It's unfortunate, quite tricky as well. I think if leaders wouldn't be egocentric and somebody who's in a hurry to be something, then I think looking into the four agendas that they had, it was a good thing. But then it was quite unfortunate, and it is still quite unfortunate what we are witnessing today, because it's like the road went diverse. Everybody had their own agenda. If a president today was to pick a running mate, then this running mate should echo or go with the vision of the president, and not it looking like they are competing to show who is more muscled. So we have been wasted for quite some time, because somebody who's supposed to be a principal assistant forgets what they are supposed to be. And now it's like a competition between the two.
And we'll talk about that principal assistant bit. But Alex, you cannot dismiss that the relationship we have seen between the president and the deputy for the last 4 years is going to form the basis on which each candidate is going to pick their own deputy as we head to the next election.
Actually, John, I've said that many times, that in my view, the two candidates are going to consider their deputy based on what they have seen as the experience between Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. And how that plays out is because then you want to be careful to pick someone that can work with. But at the same time, the unfortunate bit is that it may not be entirely on that basis, because there are other competing interests that have come in to want to determine then who becomes running mate. And that, what I mean is, if you think about Raila Odinga, for example, the competing interests of the president, Central Kenya, and Jubilee Party are going to play a critical role in terms of who then becomes a running mate. So yes, the dynamics of the president and his deputy are supposed to play a critical role, And I'm sure Raila Odinga does not forget that, but at the same time, there are other interests. At the same time, if you think about William Ruto, on the other hand, he has been on the other shoe. And therefore, I am sure in his mind, he will want to pick someone then who probably does the opposite of what has happened between him and President Uhuru. That said, that's why if you critically follow his path, even bringing in ANC and Moses Wetangula and others was not one of the things that he might have done. In my view, it came as an afterthought. It came as something that he changed his mind on along the way, just to make sure that then he accommodates the competing interests that were at play, something that he had not foreseen initially. And so the current running mate is going to be a very complex affair, so to speak, when it comes to whom to pick as a running mate.
All right, and we'll talk about the complexities. We are live from the Fairmont Hotel, the Norfolk, and of course live again on our social media sites at KBC Channel 1 on Facebook, at KBC Channel 1 on YouTube, as well as on Twitter. The hashtag to use tonight is Kenya Decides 2022. Looking at Article 147, Mark Bichachi, the roles of the deputy president, they don't appear quite well defined. So when Catherine talks about principal assistant in terms of what and his, the duties of the deputy president don't appear very well defined.
When you get married and you sign your marriage certificate, the roles of the wife are never well defined. But it is expected that the wife will not argue with you in public. It is expected that the wife will not call your projects useless. Your wife will not say you failed. I think in the imagination of the writers of the Constitution, when they wrote about principal assistant, they must have written it the way they imagined the Holy Spirit is to Christians today. A standby, a ready help, someone who stands with you through thick and thin, and comforter and counselor. These are the things that they imagine, because you do not need a constitution to tell you what it is to assist someone. He's doing a job, assist him. And if you look at critically what has happened in this particular presidency, my fear is not even for Uhuru Kenyatta, His Excellency, or His Excellency William Ruto. My fear is for the precedents they're setting for this country. I shudder to imagine my daughter or my son will be in such a marriage, where your spouse will be on top of cars every day saying how useless you are when you're busy working. It's leadership, and which camera should I look at? Leadership has to be understood not in the context of 4 years you are in power. What Jomo did all those many years ago, over 50 years ago, still rings and reverberates today. So if today we are telling people that you can be a general manager and there is a deputy general manager, and their job is to campaign every day in the company, telling them how your plans are useless, how you failed, how you've done nothing, how then will we run this country? This is not an Azimio thing, it's not a UDA thing, it's not a Kenya Kwanza thing. It's a Kenya thing. And we have to ask ourselves critically, do we want to build a society where when you're given a role, you will run amok and ensure that no one has any peace, and then still enjoy the salary and still enjoy the perks and come back and say, see, I have done nothing for 4 years, now give me a chance to do something. I think that is immoral, and I know a lot of people will tweet me about this, but I can tell you, if anybody's wife was behaving the way the deputy president has behaved, our courtrooms will be full with divorce cases.
Quite an interesting one. Looking at the Constitution itself, Catherine, I know you want to dive in. But it's a problem we've seen even with deputy governors. They appear to complain that their roles are not well defined. Even before we think about the running mate question, is it time to revisit the Constitution and make sure that the roles of a deputy president or a deputy governor are clearly outlined in the Constitution?
Very true. There's a section that needs to be repealed and a top-up made in future, because if I was to be the second in command, and unfortunately the roles are not well defined, there is trust issue. In case anything happened, who is this number 2 that is in line? Will they handle the nation in case you are absent? Are they there because of their own personal gains? And why are they with you? You know, sometimes you can walk with somebody even for 10 years and you'll never know who they were. So we need to clearly come up with a way the deputy governors or running mates or deputy presidents, what they should do and stick by. It's unfortunate that somebody cannot just fire anybody like that. The constitution complications. It's a high time we went back into our senses and not have people who waste Kenyans, because if we keep on playing around just because the constitution says, and somebody wastes everybody for 5 years chest stamping and doing nothing and making sure that anything that Kenyans could have gained is not gained, and then pointing fingers around and saying it is so and so, because I know in a marriage it's about unity, and if there's any problem then it is us, we did it, we failed, or did we do it well, and where did we go wrong? But if it is like it was you who did it, then where were you when things were not going okay? So I think a running mate should have an image of a good representer. If you don't send somebody you trust, they will misrepresent you. And that image of a national figure who is fatherly, motherly, with soft power. If you don't have soft power and you are seconding somebody, you are deputizing somebody, you will find that you are now like 2 bulls fighting all the time. No bull wants to say that I am supposed to actually step aside if my command says do it. So it's been actually murky, and it's quite unfortunate that we have witnessed that, and we hope that the 2, Raila and Ruto in future, Ruto having been the one in this government, I think he has learned too, because all of us have our point of weaknesses, and if we don't learn, then you'll get a double portion of what you used to be while there.
You know, Catherine appears to, to allude to 2 centers of power if you were to give, the deputy president defined roles. And the only place she thinks we should revisit is ensuring the president has powers to fire his deputy once they disagree. But in terms of, because the deputy president is principal assistant, the only time he appears to have duties is when the president is out of the country. Then it appears like you're leaving too much room for the deputy president probably to do what he's doing if his duties are not well defined.
Allow me to think in a different way.
Okay.
And one, if you were to think about the American Constitution, for example, it's a very scanty constitution. We keep talking about the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. So sometimes we need to ask ourselves, what was the spirit of the Constitution? There are many aspects of our current Constitution that were actually done to technically cover up for the things that were done during the Moi era. And we didn't think that those things had actually probably been overtaken by time and events, and so we didn't need to fix them. We were trying to fix roadside declarations whose time had actually passed. Secondly, allow me to say that if you think about then the roles, I'm on record, for example, saying and unfortunately it has not been fixed. The reason why IEBC had challenges was because the Secretariat is in office every day, while the Commission is also in office every day. So you have an executive commission and you have an executive secretariat, so to speak. So when you create 2 centers of power, what happens is that being normal human beings, everybody will want to show that the ones who probably made it happen or the ones who are in control. There are also resources involved. There's a country involved. There's politics involved. So anybody who has any ambitions will, of course, then take advantage of a scenario like that and then run with it. But lastly, if you think about the way the president and the deputy president came into office, That will tell you why the power struggle was there for that period. Someone will ask why the first 5 years it wasn't there. In my view, it was there from day one. It's only that Kenyans didn't see it, and the president probably lay low for the first 5 years because he needed the DP for his re-election. So it was just a matter of time. The way the two came into office, it was because of interest, and the interests were not about, there are certain things I would have said, but I'll not say. But the interests were, were more about making sure that certain things don't happen. And they succeeded. They put up a very powerful campaign machinery. And my assumption is that the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya today, probably he knew the role that he played in that match, if it was, you were to call it a match. And so probably in his imagination, he was wondering why then I can't, I mean, I ran this thing and I can have it. And for him, for those viewers who don't know, probably the Deputy President, if you think about his strategy for 2022, he started that strategy when on the first day of them entering office. So for me, nothing is surprising in terms of looking at what is going on today. And he knew, for example, that in their second term, he knew that this was going to happen. So how do you handle it if it was you? You make sure that you make sure the nominations are in your favor, make sure that Parliament is in your favor, make sure that if possible Senate is in your favor, but that's neither here nor there. And then make sure that all the offices of government, including the people who work in the offices of the president, are actually working for you indirectly. And so the dynamics playing out today, in fact, if you asked me, remove Raila Odinga from the equation. President Uhuru Kenyatta would have easily gone to work from Gatunda and wait for his retirement because there was no way he was going to run government. That's the reality of the things as they are today.
All right.
Yeah.
Bichachi, because you said on a particular morning show in this country that the definition of the roles of the deputy president, it's something you appear to talk about. But then, how do we ensure as we move into the future what Alex is saying about laying low so that there's a re-election because your deputy is popular, that these things don't hold the country hostage again?
Well, one of the things that he said, and we must clearly state here, and I've said it before, the Jubilee government of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta in its second term was underwritten and insured by the person of Raila Odinga. If Raila Odinga was not in this country, and I want to say this categorically, if Raila Odinga was not in this country, Uhuru Kenyatta would not have served out his term. It was impossible. It was not possible. And if you want to know how serious this is, remember, from the onset, he had a problem with his members of parliament in Jubilee. So that is important. And the reason why I start there is then people begin to understand and visualize the real quandary that this country was in. Because can you imagine if Raila Odinga had refused to support the president? Which legislative agenda would he be able to carry? We would have a president who's dead in the water because our constitution says he cannot run a budget without parliament. He cannot make a decision without parliament. He would be left with executive orders, and we know those are limited in scope. So how then do we ensure this does not happen again? Number one, there's a political route. The perpetrators of this, I call it a silent coup, should be punished at the ballot. Whether MP, whether senator, whether at the top ticket, they should be punished. Why should they be punished? Because for the sake of our children, for the sake of generations that will come, they need to know that you cannot raise a rebellion in your father's house and your life continues the same. Even the Bible guarantees that your life will not be okay if you do not honor a father and mother. Let's just be very clear. And you can write me if you want, but go and change the Bible first. Because we must understand, the role of a deputy is like being Daniel. Daniel, if you remember, had 7 years when Nebuchadnezzar was properly mad. Daniel didn't even check out the size of the throne. But if you go to the Wikipedia page of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, you will find a place there he has written acting President of the Republic of Kenya this year for a certain number of days. What does that tell you about that kind of person? Power hungry.
But isn't it true that he was acting president?
No. Let me ask you, every time the president leaves the country, right, where does the power lie? It is obvious it is with the deputy president,
yes.
Right? Now, when you write those things, okay, it means for 1 week Kenya did not have a deputy president. We had 2 heads of state.
Make you understand, so that I get your point, because there was a legal declaration by the president himself, making the deputy an acting president.
Went to parliament.
These are the times it has not been.
He went to parliament.
Yes.
He said that I am leaving the country, the deputy president is in charge. Now question, what is the legal process that is called? Did he resign?
No.
So what did he do? The president constitutionally is only recognized, the only instrument he can use is resignation. Okay? You cannot then say, I have temporarily ceased being president. Question, which plane did he fly in? Which bodyguard did he go with? Where he was, who was standing behind him?
Yeah.
Was William Ruto ever at any point commander-in-chief of the armed forces?
No, he was.
So how?
Yeah.
Was he ever head of state?
No.
Exactly. So you see, these things, we need to be very clear. So there's a political solution.
Yes.
The second solution is, I am a firm believer that we need a constitutional amendment. One, to define the roles of deputy governors and deputy presidents, and number 2, to give those governors and those those presidents the opportunity to say, hey, please, you cannot work with me if this is not what you're going to do. The reason why that is critical, and I want to tell the Kenyan people, when they say, oh, that is not a right a president should have. If you think a president should not have the right to hire and fire, don't vote for that person to be president. Because there is nothing worse than being put in charge of an institution and you can't fire people. If you gave me KBC today, and I can't fire you when you're doing a bad job, why are you making me a CEO?
And that is why
to fire people.
I'm just giving an example, but you're doing a good job.
Go ahead.
that is why mothers, we are saying this time, fingers crossed, a deputy president should be a woman.
Why?
Soft power. We can fight quietly, not in public.
Mama Sulu.
There's a way we talk, even to our husbands, and they know today she's not all right. We wouldn't be chest thumping, you know. So my prayer is, let us change. We cannot be using the same strategy, and we expect different results. So this time, mothers, people like Martha Karua are there. They have walked a long way, like they know properly what Kenya is, where Kenya is bleeding, where to start mending where it went wrong, and they can help Baba, because that's my president. Baba has been here in Kenya suffering for us. Some of us were not even born. Some of us are reading in history. If you take a bomb and give, or a timer, and give a baby who's still immature, in a hurry to just, the country will be in a quagmire. So we need somebody who is mature, somebody who's not greedy, somebody who has people, not just like theoretically, but pragmatically wants to change the situation of people. We have had says like wheelbarrows, hustlers, or what, but looking into it is a mockery to the Kenyan people. I have been walking in the villages and seeing how women and children are suffering, even our men. And I say, if I had a chance, I will start with this weeping child and this widow and that orphan there, and not just fighting to be on top. But the real situation that I'm saying I will do it, I had a chance for 10 years to demonstrate, but did not. For example, the deputy president has been there for the last 10 years. And the bottom-up approach that he's talking about, he could have demonstrated by uniting with the president and demonstrating by doing those things. But instead, it's just theory to me. We would love people like Baba who are thinking, one, how they will make sure every county...
Let me cut you short because we will evaluate the policies of each candidate on a later date. Today, let's concentrate more on the running mate. And she brings a very interesting point, Alex, without going to the substance of, Martha Karua as Deputy President or Anne Waiguru as Deputy President. Is it time for a woman running mate or a woman Deputy President?
Kenya and the Kenyan voter is a very interesting voter. Yeah, I agree. It's about time that probably we had a woman running mate. However, I think it's also good to be realistic about the dynamics of the day. And the dynamics of the day that I talk about are going to be more about regions, acceptability, who is that man or woman then who would fit the bill in terms of the expectations of that region. Like, for example, if it's going to be the Mount Kenya region, if you're fronting a woman, then who is that woman? It's going to be to a level where even when you're fronting a man, then who is that man that you're fronting? And depending on the coalition side, for example, the Raila side will have a different approach to it, while the William Ruto side will have a different approach to it. But I think whether a woman running mate will make a better deputy president or not, that's too early to tell. It's also good to also realize that it also depends on which woman that will be, because it's I don't want to go into the merits and the demerits of the same, but
at some point we will.
Yes, it's likely to be that same question that I'm asking: which woman is that? You can have one woman who is very woman than other women. So that will also determine. Also, it will be dependent on which presidential candidate that is. You can be a woman running mate under someone that you'll be completely overshadowed when you are also a woman deputy president and a president who will allow you to also be almost like run the affairs of state. So it will be, I mean, the dynamics are so many. The unfortunate bit is that currently we don't have very many women running for that position. And if you asked me, I would say that the women being mentioned can actually manage that position. What I'm not sure about, is whether they will actually end up being in that position.
All right. We want to take a breather, but there's somebody who appears to respond to Bichachi's example. Yeah, obviously, yeah. Hey, the issue of a submissive wife does not apply here. The said man of the house divorced him 4 years ago, gave all her duties. It has even emerged that the person does not receive any government provisions, even very cheap provisions like refreshments. There has not been any marriage in the last 4 years, and so any wife would expose a hubby who divorced her.
Can I respond?
Very quickly, 1 minute.
Let me tell you, I live very close to that house where there are no refreshments, and no, that is the biggest lie on earth. That wife has enjoyed full privilege, attended every cabinet meeting, except when it is in public to win the sympathy of people who cannot see behind the veil.
All right. We are taking a breather. Keep watching Kenya Decides. The hashtag is Kenya Decides 2022. We're live with Mark Bichachi, Alex Manyasi, and Catherine Nomani. And most importantly, when we come back now, we are going to be evaluating each candidate against possible running mates to see which one works best, at least according to the panel. Let's take a breather. Don't go too far.
Mtoto yuko wapi?
Yuko ndani, bado daktari anamwangalia.
Na huyu mwanamke sitaki kumuona hapa.
Kawaida ya mwanamke anayemjali mtoto wake hukuwa katika hali hii wakati kama huu.
Mnaelewa vizuri sana ni sababu gani ambayo inatufanya tukae chini hapa pamoja.
Nice try. Oh no, sweetheart. I was not trying.
So watakuniacha ama?
Nipe sababu ya kubaki na wewe.
Even if all what you're saying is true, I still won't go with you, okay?
You are an...
Very well then.
Your mother told me what you saw in the newspaper.
You've been lying to me. I know that you have another wife. No wonder you never sleep in this house with us.
You're merely covering up a lie with another lie. Stand by that promise you made to your son. Now's the time. Now's the time to divorce Ines.
I'm so desperate, for heaven's sake.
Listen, Nuria. I have no idea what you're doing in Playa Linda. And I don't know what kind of trouble you're in, but I will not be your accomplice. Is that clear? So it really is true.
Adrian. Let's give him our blessings, okay? Blessings? What about me, then? Shannon, don't go. I won't allow you to ruin Windsor and Pinky's wedding. No, I must stop them right now. I must stop them now!
You're Shannon, aren't you? How come?
Right. I'm not dead. I'm still alive.
You're watching Kenya Decides on KBC Channel 1, and we appreciate your feedback. Too much of it at KBC Channel 1 on Facebook as well as on Twitter. And the hashtag to use is Kenya Decides 2022. And the debate went on air and off air, and we continue and pick up from where we left. But it is important, probably even before we start, talking about running mate and presidential candidate. There appears to be almost a near consensus, and I use that word carefully, almost a near consensus, that a running mate will come from Mount Kenya, probably from both coalitions. Is it a must? Alex?
Part of the reason why it's near consensus, to use your words, is because of the fact that Mount Kenya, for the first time, is not going to produce a substantive, I'm using specific words, presidential candidate, because there are others, but they're just others. And so for that reason, in terms of their numbers, there are certain communities in this country that are known to put their votes in one basket. And so for that reason, you know that it's a massive vote, number one. And number two, it's likely to be consolidated. So every one of the candidates would then want to have a running mate from that region to be assured of a certain block of votes. That's basically why. There's no other reason. Of course, what makes it even more complex is the fact that the current president is from that region and somehow is going to be part of the process of fronting someone for election of president because of the interest that he has in that same process. So because of that, then Mount Kenya becomes a very a region that you must watch in this process. However, even after I have said that, it will not be surprising, for example, to have running mate that is not from Mount Kenya. One of the things that I have been thinking about, for example, is why you don't need a deputy president to actually benefit from government. And why I say that is because of this. The deputy president negotiated for half of government as deputy president. But his functionality as deputy president, assuming that he did not have half the cabinet and half the government literally, will his being deputy president have made more meaning to the people of Rift Valley, for example? You see, that's the basic question I ask myself. And therefore, in my view, the people of Mount Kenya, unless they're picking up deputy president or a running mate with the intention of making that person president in 2032 or whichever year that is, then to me it doesn't make sense. So for me, if I was from Mount Kenya, I will actually relinquish that deputy president thing, make sure that there's another community that gets it, to consolidate votes, to make sure that there's a win, but negotiate to a point where we get a lot more from that government than the deputy president position. I would think about it like that. This over excitement about the DP position. After all, some of us will be pushing for the change of the constitution so that then the deputy president becomes someone who can be fired tomorrow.
Actually,
the Mount Kenya question.
Yeah, it is an area that is densely populated, but they are not dense when it comes to voting. They vote as a block, but why? There is a lot of interest. That area is also a swing area. So for any serious president today, now, should be eyeing to make sure that he doesn't miss out that area, because they're a bit cleverer. Right now, they don't have a president, and there is a void. That void must be filled by substantial position. For now, it is that. And if either way, among the people who have been placed there to be maybe selected, I think that area comes on top first. In politics, we look at numbers. And if you really want to win, then that tyranny of numbers comes into play.
Does it exist anymore?
It does. Numbers? It does, because a brother from Mount Kenya, Kikuyu, and a brother from Eldoret or Busia, a Kikuyu, votes similar. They think almost the same. Where the direction of who the president will be and what they want to do with their vote, somehow it comes as a block. So somehow any presidential candidate would be desperate to win people around that area more, but also you can't underestimate other regions that can also come into play. But for now, Mount Kenya comes on top.
So you would advise your party leader to go for a running mate from Mount Kenya?
Yes, to put his bull's eye there.
Okay. Mark, as you respond to that question, there are those who say the deputy president has an edge over Raila Odinga when it comes to the Mount Kenya vote. And he really doesn't have a very big stake, even if he doesn't pick a running mate from Mount Kenya, because he has an edge in the region. What do you think?
It would be a very glorious day when we wake up and Kenyans looked at a Kalenjin leader without a running mate from the mountain and voted for him anyway. That would be a monumental step towards detribalizing our politics. But since we live in reality, I can tell you this. The deputy president's foot soldiers and the prospect of having a Mount Kenya running mate has given him an edge, slight edge, in the mountain of Raila Odinga.
Okay.
Now, that edge can only be cemented by picking a running mate from the mountain. If, for example, he was to hazard and pick Musalia Mudavadi, he would possibly consolidate the Luhya vote. But does the Luhya vote put together compare to the Mount Kenya vote? Not really. And not really for two reasons. Number one, their numbers don't match up. And number two, Luhyas traditionally do not vote in one basket. They have not done so since 2002. right? So we know that you can't have all of the Luhya vote, but there's a possibility you can have all of the Kikuyu vote. Now the question is this. The question really, and I appreciate my brother in his saying that the running mate position does not matter, but that is in an intellectual basis. When we watched the movie Black Panther, when we watched a fellow black man being a superhero, we were happy. Our GDP didn't change. Nobody who had cancer was cured in Kenya, but we were excited. Because as human beings, we get excited when we see people with a similar name as ours, similar face as ours. And believe you me, this is about excitement. It is not about policy, it's not about agenda, it's about excitement, it's about exciting a base. And Raila Odinga, perhaps more than William Ruto, needs to excite his base in Central more than William Ruto. William Ruto has had 4 or 5 years of talking, going to the mountain every day and every weekend. So Raila Odinga is boxed in that perspective. But the question really has been complicated by the topic we had before. And this is why I join issue with my brother when he asks which kind of woman. Because there's one lady who's an iron lady. And you cannot take that person and that presence away from her. Will she be able to condescend herself to the imagined role of a DP that we want today? You also have Ms. Chege, who has been fronted. Again, a very strong woman. But on the other side, in the mountain as well, you've got to think a bit different. What if these candidates go for the most quiet one? Go for the one who has worked and been quiet. What if they go for Mutahi Kagwe? For the reasons we've discussed before. Because the guy didn't resign, he's working dutifully. What about Peter Munya? You know, because we've got to think. Because if we've given this long explanation and a litany of issues as to why we cannot have such a powerful, perhaps we need a Kamala Harris. And who's the Kamala Harris of Kenya? Perhaps we need a Suluhu. And who's the Suluhu of Kenya? Who is this person who will not try to outshine his master? And my bet is we might be surprised, whether happily or unhappily. Peter Kenneth with his colorlessness might be chosen. You know, Mutahi Kagwe with his diligence might be chosen, because at the end of the day, I am not sure even William Ruto wants a deputy called William Ruto.
It is important to note that the colorless remark is not it is not.
No, it is not an insult.
Done here. But I was looking at the interviews that are bound to begin tomorrow for the Azimio deputy presidential candidates. And obviously the things they've lined up is what is captured in the Constitution in Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity. But for a person like Kalonzo Musyoka, who has deputized Raila in 2013 and 2017, the mere fact that Azimio wants to interview hopefuls for the deputy presidency under Raila Odinga, it appears like it's a sign to Kalonzo, forget about this thing.
To be honest, I was a bit surprised by that interview thing. Because there's nowhere under the law or under the Constitution where interviews are supposed to be conducted for a deputy president or a running mate position. When William Ruto became Uhuru Kenyatta's running mate, all of us were just, we saw it in the news that William Ruto was now running mate. And so the entire interview process, in my view, is supposed to be, it's more of managing expectations of the candidates more than the interview per se. I say that because then if you think about it critically, that interview process is not going to add any value to the process. Why? Is because the expectations are actually just, even me, I will qualify, sitting here today, I will qualify to be running mate. And so what will differentiate Martha Karua from Kalonzo Musyoka, for example, or what will differentiate Peter Kenneth from Martha Karua? The interests and the politics around it is more about balancing. It's more about Central versus Eastern versus Nyanza, other than more than the candidates that you're presenting for interviewing. All of us know, for example, that even when we take ministers to Parliament for vetting, it's always neither here nor there in terms of, the process is not, and that, remember, that's a requirement by law. Now, this one is not even a requirement by law. So what do we expect from that kind of process? If you ask me, it's neither here nor there. It's going to probably just give a dog a bad name and then move on.
So you think Kalonzo, either way, is not a factor here?
It's not a factor. At this point in time, I don't think that the name that we're going to be shown, we can say that this person performed and scored 99%, and this other person performed and scored 60. I am waiting to see how that will be scored.
Catherine, you know, I was listening to Mark, and Mark was headed a particular direction, particularly on your favorite candidate for running mate in Mount Kenya.
Oh, she happens to be a friend of mine. I have no problem with anybody.
Particularly on your candidate. And obviously, I mean, listening out here, there is that concern whether Martha Karua can really be the ideal deputy for Raila Amolo Odinga.
She stands really strong. She has a history of persistency, and she's knowledgeable. Like he said, which woman? We wouldn't love a flower girl at the same time. We would love a woman who sees this glass and says it's 3/4. That is, there's a reason why it's not full. And she's well-read, traveled, and has tried to be a president, meaning she knows every corner of Kenya. It's good to have a knowledgeable deputy president. Having said that, there are so many other things. All of us are human beings, our weakest points and all that. I see her as the only person that if Raila said, then nobody will cry.
Mark used a particular word, condescending. And I think he wanted to ask whether Martha Karua will humble herself enough.
You know, everybody goes for a position after thinking about it deeply. And as I sit here, I know she has extensively and intensively thought about it for her even to allow her name to be on the list. And people change, we change. And having also seen what others have done, we wouldn't love to be a replica of what another person has done, to be called a failure, in brackets. So I really softly seated here would want to see a change in how people look at things when it comes to leadership, because many times a few women that are there that have come out and tried, you know, politics is like climbing a hyena. There are so many words or names that a woman is given compared to a man if we were on the same table running for a position in politics. So looking at Martha Karua and looking at her as a woman, she has a soft beat in her. When you see her seated or talking to Baba, there is a way she listens. So she can bite, but she knows when to bite.
And Kalonzo can do that?
Kalonzo, on the other hand, is almost like a twin to Baba. He's traveled, he's done things, has stooped even a grade lower to allow Baba to be there to support. He's equally good. So sometimes you are just in that dilemma of very good people. But what I'm praying for is out of these very good people, if they come up with one, then the other one should not step out, because there are repercussions. In either way, there will be repercussions.
All right.
Yeah.
Mark, Martha Karua doesn't appear, even if she's very much interested in the position of deputy president, she doesn't appear to be giving conditions. There's only Kalonzo and, you know, particularly his lieutenant saying this must happen, must be Kalonzo Musyoka. Now, let's explore what happens then if Raila Odinga names Martha Karua as running mate. How is that taken? And number two, what happens to Kalonzo Musyoka?
You know, we must be very aware that even according to opinion polls recently released, that Martha bodes very well as a running mate for Raila Odinga. This is without question. In the eyes of the public, she represents someone who has fought corruption. She represents someone who was part of the Second Liberation. She represents someone who understands the needs of the people, and she also represents someone who succeeded in the assignments that she's been given. So her CV is without question. And that is important to say, because when I was talking about condescending, I was referring to the conversations before, and I was preparing the people for the likelihood of a surprise running mate. You know, you and I keep saying this, do not be surprised if it's a Munya, it's a Mutai Kagwe, it's a Chege, it's a Peter Kenneth. Do not be surprised. But that being said, the issue here is you need to understand which tactic Kalonzo Musyoka and his team is using. They are trying to fix Raila Odinga and Azimio to a corner where there's an unsaid ultimatum. In fact, today there was one of them who said they've even gone to the IEBC to prepare a way for Kalonzo Musyoka to run as an independent. All of these things are threats, and they're threats to say that if you dare not choose me, then there's a consequence to be paid, and that consequence is not Kalonzo Musyoka running independent, is him running away with his constituency called Ukambani. Now, here's the issue. Ukambani itself, among the leadership, is not settled. You've got Ngilu with Baba, you've got Professor with Baba, and then you've got Mutua, who's looking lukewarm. But at the end of the day, would it be consequential to lose 800 to 1.2 million votes for not choosing Kalonzo as a deputy? Now, here's the thing. I do not think the price will be too hard to pay. Because politics is not just about your opponent getting votes, it's also him lacking votes. If those votes do not go straight to Raila, to William Ruto, then Raila Odinga can survive. But if Kalonzo is somehow able to transplant all the votes in Ukambani in the next 2-3 weeks and put them firmly in Kenya Kwanza, then there's nothing to worry about. However, what does Baba lose if he does not win over the mountain? Now, let me put it to you categorically so we understand each other. If there was no super vote in 2007, come from where? You remember? Famous place? If that vote did not come, Raila would have been president in 2007. If in 2013, William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta did not get 100% of the mountain and 100% of the rift, Raila Odinga would be president of this country. What I'm simply saying is this. If there is a formula to winning the presidency of this country, if there is a formula to the stew that you drink that makes you president, then you must understand that stew is made of 35% Kikuyu. That is the formula. And if Baba is clear about that, then he stands to gain more by bringing the Kikuyu on board than losing Kalonzo, and Kalonzo does not necessarily mean that he has lost the Kamba vote. This is the reality. That is how it is. So if you're going to cook that stew, Baba, if you're going to cook that stew, William Ruto, and William Ruto knows this very well, which is why he's been doing it since 2013. He knows it very well. If you want to cook presidential stew, Mount Kenya is the meat.
But Baba has always won. He has always won, regardless.
But we have about like 6 minutes, Alex, so we can wind up. Raila appears to have so many choices, but when you go to Kenya Kwanza, who are the choices for the deputy president? Is it Musalia Mudavadi? Is it Justin Muturi? Is it Rigathi Gachagua?
You know why there's not much hullabaloo about Kenya Kwanza and the presidential the running mate, is because William Ruto has succeeded in revolving everything around him. Before we started the show, I was telling you that it's more complex for Raila Odinga because of the Uhuru factor, because of the Jubilee factor, because of the Kalonzo factor, because of the many other parties that have a lot of interests that are looking at the same thing. On the Ruto side, you will know that even the people that have joined him have technically joined him largely on his terms. And so he has more leverage in terms of deciding how he's going to pick his running mate. And it looks like Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula, for example, have technically and in principle allowed him to actually do that. And that's why you don't hear that talk on the other side. So in my view, how Deputy President arrives at his running mate is likely to be influenced by how the Baba side actually decides which direction to go. I would not be surprised if William Ruto already has like 5 names in priority order, so that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on. And I will not be surprised if they have done scenarios. In the event that Baba picks this, we pick this. In the event that Baba takes this route, then we take that route. And of course, the easiest will be if Baba decides to do Mount Kenya, William Ruto does Mount Kenya, and that complicates Baba's business because then he's more likely to gain more from Mount Kenya than Baba would. And so, and that's why if you hear, for example, them telling Kalonzo Musyoka, you know, you're being embarrassed, you know. First of all, Kalonzo Musyoka has no advantage by crossing lines right now. Whether he remains with Baba, whether he crosses from Baba, in my view, the net outcome is the same.
But he has done that before.
He's done that before.
Yeah.
You know, Kalonzo Musyoka, let me not describe what kind of person he is. But ultimately, in my view, if you asked me, whether he leaves Baba or he stays with Baba, at this point in time, I don't think that he gives anyone else an advantage.
Okay.
At this point, it doesn't. Yeah.
We need to wind up. Obviously, I know you support Azimio, so you don't have much to say about the choice of Deputy President
yes,
for William Ruto.
We are lucky on Azimio because Baba stands for democracy, and even the interview that is coming is out of what Baba is. Let then the interview, because in politics sometimes we don't have a formula. Whatever is there, and people are like, okay, now we have these lovely people, all of them very good. What do we do? Maybe let's just have a small interview to all of them, so nobody says nobody gave me a chance, and I was also online. So I think we have even Charity Ngilu. I had forgotten. Yes, even her. We have beautiful people there. I just don't, like I said, both sides of the spectrum is looking good. But if they will still remain glued after one of them has been picked on is another question. Yeah, but
you're
on the
insisting on the unity of Azimio even after they name the running mate. Finally, Mark, as we wind up, is that the one candidate that the Deputy President can pick and totally upstage Raila Odinga in Mount Kenya?
Upstage Raila Odinga, no. The reality is if Mount Kenya today had a colorful candidate, had someone who had the pomp and glamour and the veritas of the late great Mwai Kibaki or the current Uhuru Kenyatta, then they would be fielding their own candidate, to trust you me. So there is no one really, if you look across the landscape, who can say that they carry a Mount Kenya. I think the only surprising thing that William Ruto can do is to choose Musalia Mudavadi as running mate. Now that will be surprising. Will it be effective? No. Would it surprise everybody? Yes. So if you're looking for the shock factor, Mudavadi. But realistically, I think he's in a corner. I don't think he has to choose either Rigathi, he has to choose Anwar Guru or Justin Muturi. I think those are the 3 choices that he has. Then Mudavadi will have to go home and explain to the lawyers what he agreed to.
All right, let's do a very quick exercise as we wind up. I will mention a ticket and you will give it a percentage. Is that okay? A ticket and a percentage.
Okay.
Raila Karua.
I'll give it a 50%.
50%. Raila Karua?
70.
Raila Karua?
I'd give it 57%.
57%. Raila Kalonzo?
That would be a 45.
45.
50.
50.
49.
49. Raila Peter Munya?
I would still give it a 50.
50. Raila Peter Munya?
60.
51.
Raila Peter Kenneth?
49.
49.
50.
I'd
50.
be at 50.
You would be at 50. Raila Joe?
22.
22.
70.
70.
43. What you got in 2017?
43. Raila Ngilu?
Probably it will still be a 45.
45.
60.
60.
I would give it a 47.
47. Let's go to Kenya Kwanza. Ruto Mudavadi?
A 50.
50.
40.
40.
Ruto Mudavadi 41 wakijaribu sana.
41. Ruto Justin Muturi?
It will still be a 50.
50.
40.
40.
49.
49. Ruto Anne Waiguru?
42.
42.
50.
50. You have raised the percentage, at least.
47.
47.
Yeah.
Ruto Rigathi Gachagua?
That will be a 42 still.
42.
30.
30.
I would give them a 47.
47. Ruto Kithure Kindiki?
It should still be a 50.
50.
40.
40.
41.
41. And finally, Ruto Ndindi Nyoro?
It should still be a 50.
50.
Yeah, 45.
I'd give it a 50.
You would give it a 50. Fantastic. We had a panel here, so probably the two coalitions can actually take from the marks awarded by the panel. Thank you very much, Alex. And thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mark, for joining us tonight. Unfortunately, we have to put a cap on Kenya Decides. Join us every Tuesday from 10 to 11, and on Sunday, Kenya Yaamua from 6 to 7. My name is John Jacob Curia. We are live from Norfolk, Fairmont, and thank you very much. We appreciate your feedback. God bless you. Good night.
Are you an aspiring candidate in the upcoming general elections? Do you want your agenda and manifesto to reach your voters effectively? At KBC, we have the most comprehensive and credible online platform that has profiles of all prospective candidates. Log on to www.kbc.co.ke/2022 aspirants and let Kenyans know more about you, your past achievements, your manifesto, and your development agenda once you get elected to office. What's more, the website is easy to navigate. We will create your profile, post pictures and short videos with your campaign messages at affordable host